weekend from getting my shot, and boy is my arm sore. This is Fragments of Silicon.
Welcome to a new installment of Fragments of Silicon. I'm your host, Adam. Joining me, as always, is the regular crew. Mac's not with us this week. I'm presuming it's because Last News Desk is on break. So I'm presuming that he's not joining us next week, but we'll see. It's like, at this stage, we can move on with or without him. We've done that for literal years. So, if he doesn't join us, that's fine. It doesn't affect too much. So we'll probably have him back when Last News Desk returns in 2 weeks. In the meantime, let's get to the news. Petty, why don't you start us off this week?
Not too much has been going on this week. I had a follow-up with my pain management doctor about my back, and they want to do some more medicine and injections, so that's going to be fun. And yeah, my mom's having another shoulder surgery on Friday, so hooray. And other than that, I've been trudging through Breath of the Wild. I beat the elephant divine beast.
That's a good first one.
Mm-hmm.
I just was picked a random direction and went, so...
Well, that's the one. Did you run into any of the Zors? They're like, hey, you should totally go meet Zidon.
Not that I can remember. Not until I hit the
there are
domain.
a few feelers out that kind of point you in the direction of that one.
But yeah, so I'm thinking about, which direction to go next. Also looking for the towers, because... I swear, sometimes puzzle solving in this game feels like I'm cheating, and I might actually be, I don't know yet.
No, if you can do it, it works.
Yeah.
Indeed.
There are ways to get through some of the initial rune shrines without getting the rune.
Well then.
And if you do that, the guy at the end says, "Please go back and actually get the thing."
But yeah, so that's been happening. And still been doing the raiding stuff, but off camera because meh. Something numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think that's about it.
All right. Twilight, you're next.
All right. Well, it feels like we went back to February over here for today, at least.
Oh, you had snow too?
Yep. It's been cold. It's been snowing. Thought it was sleet at first until I actually went out in it and felt it was actually snow, which is better than sleet, obviously. Then I had to bring some of my plants in from my porch outside to ensure they don't get frosted over in the morning or sometime tonight. Last Saturday I helped the landlady out with the yard sale she was having nearby. Nobody would come to pick up any of the stuff from the previous owner of the. Not it didn't belong to the squatter in that house. It was actually the person she was taking care of. Unfortunately, the lady is now in a nursing home. She was elderly, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Some member of her family was supposed to come by and pick up the stuff, but there was a 2-month wait on that, which I agreed was plenty long enough. So yeah, um, half the stuff was sold. She is going to take the rest of it to Goodwill. So there's that. Um, Work's going pretty well. In gaming news, I gave the PS4 demo of Resident Evil Village a shot. I think it was Saturday, I believe. Yeah. Or was it Friday? Anyway, yeah, it's not one I'm going to actually rush to getting anytime soon. I'm honestly waiting until I get a better computer for Village because apparently mine is below the minimum spec. So I'll wait for the demo to see for the PC version, of course, to see for sure about that. Otherwise, yeah, I'll hold off on it. I haven't actually played 7 anyway, so I want to do that before then. And I picked up Shadow Man Remastered and was given a run through last night, and yeah, I'm actually liking it pretty well so far. And then, yeah, the Monday, the Mac and Various did more Overwatch. Windows Update decided to get involved and eat my bandwidth, um, and broke the connection apparently for a good 30 minutes. Then gave me more trouble after the connection reestablished. And yeah, there was that. And then, yeah, there's something else I wish to say, but I'm going to hold off on that for now. And yeah, that's it for me.
Okay, Alex, you're up.
Well, this past weekend me and Mac continued MS Saga, so that's been going well. I got my COVID shot yesterday, the first one, and as I alluded to in my intro thing, my arm was quite sore yesterday and still a little bit sore today.
Mm.
My sister's up visiting for a little bit, so so we've been playing board games, and that's always fun. And today was Administrative Professionals Day, so work gave me a gift card to Amato's, which is a like deli type place. So that was nice.
Oh man.
That's about all I got.
All right. I guess it's my go then. Let's see. It's been fairly busy actually. Let's see. Over the weekend, my new mattress came in. It's a 12-inch medium firm memory foam. It's like a big marshmallow. Oh, it's comfortable. It's something that I've needed because my bed frame isn't a box spring; it's a pure metal frame, and the 6-incher was not enough. Yeah, it's like
yeah, memory foam's actually pretty nice.
yeah, it's nice when you have enough of it. Like otherwise, yeah, I was waking up quite sore from it. Well, it's like, you know, it was only a certain amount of padding versus metal. But
Spoiler: metal always wins.
like, I mean, shit. My mom sprained her shoulder or wrist or some body part the last time she stayed over and slept in it. And yeah, but it's kind of a, kind of a bitch to move. Like, it's a lot bulkier than I initially thought, but no, it's it's like once it's in position, it was fine. Let's see. Speaking of moving shit, I gotta help Mother move a cabinet down to my brother's new place. He recently moved. Like I think he's like an hour and a half away now. Like I know he's closer, not that much closer. it's been raining here the past few days. So, um, and we were originally supposed to move this thing on Monday, because my brother was up here because he was helping mother out with some building material because he currently works at Lowe's, and there was this whole discount thing because she's getting a new kitchen floor, and you know, but that plan got nixed because once again it was raining a lot.
I almost
Like,
think you live in Florida or something.
well, it's the rainy season coming in. It's not quite as bad as it is in the summer, but it's coming in. So what was going to happen on Monday turned into sometime in the next 2 weeks. Speaking in the next 2 weeks, made an appointment to get new glasses after I got my license renewed. Managed to pass my vision test barely. Like, it's been longer than it perhaps should be that I got my last pair of glasses. So I still passed. That's the important part. But certain things were small, blurry, and hard to read out, more so than they were before. I mean, that's how these things work until the cyborg eyeball gets perfected.
Can I have one?
I guess LASIK is also there, but I don't know how much that costs. And I don't think that's covered under my insurance. So, yeah, quite a bit going on. And yeah, my vision appointment is 2 weeks from now, which was like, and I made it about a week ago. Like, I don't know the reason why it's taking 3 weeks to do this, but apparently that was, May 5th was the first spot they had.
Mm-hmm.
So, whatever. And yeah, that's about it for my news for the week. So, merrily, we shall roll along to the interview portion of the broadcast. And joining us this week is Kevin Jenkins of Poleaxe Games.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on.
No problem, no problem. How are you doing today?
I'm just tired, like every day, pretty much. I work quite a lot.
Relatable.
Yeah.
Very
One
relatable.
of us. One of us.
Oh. Right. So how we like to get started, we like to get to know the people behind the games, the studio, and what have you. And we do this by asking this particular question: what got you interested in video games, both on a personal and a professional level?
I've been playing video games my whole life, starting with an Atari 800. With the Atari 800, it actually had a keyboard, and I would type in basically game code from magazines. And I kind of naturally went into game development after graduating college. I didn't even really look at anything else. I worked at a few companies for a while, but what kind of what I drew to actually was creating RackNet, which was basically a network thing that I would license to game companies. So I haven't made too many games directly, but I've been involved in a lot of games through my middleware. So I eventually sold that middleware to Oculus. Oculus was bought out by Facebook, but working for Facebook isn't really the kind of thing I want to do. I want to make games. So that's what I did, and when I started Poleaxe Games 4 years ago.
I mean, to be fair, Facebook does make games now. They bought out a fair few VR developers, but I think that's kind of the rub. It's like right now Facebook is primarily interested in VR development. You still there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's just not the role I was assigned when Oculus was bought out. I was part of Oculus at the time. So I was working on Oculus stuff and not on games, and I actually want to work on games.
And what middleware did you develop that was so intrigued by Oculus.
It's called Racknet. It's actually still around in public domain form. It would enable game companies to make their games multiplayer more easily. Back in the day, there wasn't really any good way to do that, and so every company would have to code up everything from scratch. So I provided kind of this drop-in solution that would make it easier.
Yeah, I could see why
Ah,
that would be desired. Like, um, and okay, so you decided to stake out on your own to make games, and I suppose that gets to the uh, your featured game here, Empire of Ember. What inspired you to make this particular game?
When I was a kid, I used to like to build Lego castles, and I would imagine catapults shooting the castle walls and the walls falling down, and the different strategic way you could build up walls to be stronger and where you could position units. So I kind of made that game, uh, but partly due to inexperienced with how much work it is to make a game, I added on a lot of extra features that actually all got into the game, but contributed to the game taking 4 years. So it has a first-person element. It has dungeons, very large scale army battles, full quest RPG style leveling up.
That 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 does sound like a lot. Like, um, was that all in the initial planning, or is that stuff that got added in as development went along?
The initial plan was to purely make a building castle game
Mm-hmm.
with enemies that could fight. So there was no RPG element. There wasn't even really a first person element. That kind of came on just because I'm a big fan of Mountain and Blade. And Mountain and Blade also has castle battles, but in Mountain and Blade, you don't actually build the castle you fight in. It's not destructible. And so I have those things.
Well, I mean, I suppose that's modern flourishes. From what I've seen of the city building, it reminds me a lot of Fortnite. Like, how Fortnite does things. Like, I mean, maybe a bit more elaborate, but still. And yeah, Mountain Blade is also like, at least the first game is fairly, and um, its first sequel. They're fairly old games at this point, so it's not surprising that they don't have destructible environments. I'm not sure how advanced Bannerlord is, but um, you know. Anyway, yeah, I can see why all of this would add up to a game that has taken 4 years. Um, I know. At what point did you realize that this game was taking so long?
Well, I I reached a point. Well, part of the time was also because I wanted to support modding. Part of the time was because I was using Unity, and both of those added on to the total time that it would take, maybe even 1 year of those 4 years, just for those two things. Um, I think I kind of realized it at one point where I said I would have never added this feature if I knew how much extra work it was going to be. I think I was thinking about first person combat at the time. But a lot of it just added up. Randomized dungeons. It sounds easy in principle. You just connect rooms together and turn features on or off to make it look differently through different playthroughs. But there's a lot of technical things with that. The pathfinding has to be very carefully tuned because of obstacles. You have to set up enemies so you don't have too many enemies in one particular location. Make sure enemies don't spawn where they can't actually move. There's a lot of art involved with lighting. Dungeons, they have normally in a game you'll do something called baking lights, which makes it run faster. But with randomization, at least in Unity, you can't do that. A lot of technical challenges just due to having dynamic content.
If we had a nickel for every time we have heard this kind of tale, like, you know, making video games is hard. Like, I think that's the one thing that's been universal across our various interview series. But so, given the benefit of hindsight, you wouldn't have added these systems and all that. But given that the game is in early access, at the very least, how do you feel about them currently?
In the end, I think it was a right call to have these features because I've gotten some attention from some pretty popular YouTubers who say the game has really great potential. The keyword is potential. I'm doing a lot of features you don't see in other games. People do find it interesting, but this kind of game I'm making would normally take a team of like 10 people, not one person. So um, the potential is kind of the word where with games being very demanding these days, customers being very demanding, they want especially because I made a first person game, I get compared against other full fidelity, realistic looking first person games like Assassin's Creed, unfortunately. Where if I had gone with like some kind of simple art style that was uniform through the game, people might have overlooked that. Um, so I would say I'm on the right track in terms of potential. Whereas if I had not done that, my game might have just been overlooked, and it might have been one of those 50 games you see released on Steam every day. They get like 2 reviews and then they just disappear. So that's good, but it has added a huge cost and workload. And my early access was not as successful as I had hoped. I did get users, and some users really love it. Um, but there were just due to the scope of the game and the system demands of the game, um, that I didn't have a professional testing company. A lot of bugs came out. So I fixed actually maybe 75% of the bugs just in the 2 weeks, just since I released, just by not sleeping. However, it did get a lower rating than I had hoped, and so my plans right now are actually just to hunker down for the next month, really finish all the bugs, tune the game the best I can, and then resume marketing again.
Like, I mean, kind of the that's kind of the gamble here. I mean, especially since this is only being worked on by you. Like,
So I do have an artist who's helping me out. So it's not technically true to say it's only me. However, it is true to say I've done 75 to 80% of all the work personally, and I'm involved in the other 20%.
like I imagine that's another reason why this is taking 4 years. You know, as you said. Um, I suppose that's another question. Have you looked into getting more people on board to help you make this game?
Sure. If I can find the good people, and that's actually something I hadn't. It's a lesson I had to learn making this game, which is hiring people itself has a cost. It's not just the wage you pay. You have to find the right people, and you have to find the right people at the right price, especially if it's self-funded like me. And having to learn that lesson the hard way, I made a lot of bad hires, especially my earliest hires, where I would sometimes have to throw away all the work they did and redo it myself. So for the people that I have helping me now, I actually hire relatively expensive and very senior people but it's cheaper than hiring somebody who doesn't really know how to work on a game of this size without someone helping them. That's kind of the difference between a junior person and a senior person, where a senior person, I can just say, I want this done. But a junior person, I have to give them something like very narrow for it to be successful. And there just isn't enough people. I don't have leads and things to track people. So that's kind of where it is, where I can't really afford to compete on graphics, which is where you really get hiring people. But I can compete on game design. I can compete on programming because that's kind of my own time.
Right. And as far as the engine itself is concerned, has Unity been a help or a hindrance?
So not having used Unreal, I can't fairly compare how it would have went if I had used Unreal instead. I can point out particular difficulties I've had with Unity if that would be of interest.
Sure.
So with game engines, you can pick between performance, features, and ease of use, and you can select two. So Unity went for features and ease of use, while Unreal went for performance and features. So I don't have that performance, and I've had to optimize very heavily. And even despite that, the game still runs poorly for some people, and I don't have as many units as I would have if I had used Unreal. Um, I also feel like Unity support tends to be for the mass market game developer, single guys making mobile games. And so they get so many bug reports that the bug reports they do get that are complicated or for big games, they generally haven't, at least in my case, they haven't looked at. If I wasn't just me, if I were like a big company and I were paying for their premium support, it might be different. But even to this day, I've had outstanding bugs with them. There are actually really serious flaws in their engine, and I can't get them looked at.
Mm. Like, I don't I mean, that does line up with some other complaints I've heard towards Unity. Like, and that is unfortunate. But, you know, I guess it's a bit too late to change things. And anyway, so we've talked quite a bit about the technical details of Empire of Ember, but we haven't actually talked about the game itself, um, or at least like what's the actual game? Like, what's the story here? Who are you? Who are you fighting? That kind of detail.
Sure. So you're basically a battle mage, and have you played Dark Messiah of Might and Magic before?
Yes, long time ago.
It was a long time ago, but that game really inspired me. I really loved that combination where you could spec into melee combat or magic. Um,
Yeah,
and so,
the thing I remember most about Dark Messiah of Might and Magic is it was very tied to the source engine. Like, it wasn't so much about melee combat, or it was about getting people into environmental traps. You know, it's less about slicing them with a sword and getting them into that wall of spikes. So, but yeah, I do remember the game, and what particular part inspired you to make um, a game like this? Because this is kind of far off from Dark Messiah.
it's not quite that far off. The melee combat, especially in the dungeons, is quite close. It has the spike traps, it has exploding barrels, it has fire pits. So basically, to go back to the story though, you're a battle mage. Your master was killed in this surprise attack, and the goblins destroyed the city where you grew up and your master lived. So you take over as the new ruler of the city, which you have to build from scratch. Um, so you're following a storyline that was written by Patrick Kevin Day. He was one of the former lead writers for Telltale Games. And you level up, you build your army, you fight through these missions that reveal more of the story. And there's basically three types of missions. You have the overland combat with big armies, and that's kind of like Mount and Blade. You have what I call linear missions, which are more kind of like your Dark Souls style levels, where you're just going through by yourself or with a small group of guys, and it's a fully custom built out level, pretty long, about 15 minutes. And then you have the dungeons, and in the dungeons you're completely alone. Um, the linear missions are pre-built, but the overland battles and the dungeons are randomized. Oh, and there's also siege battles. So enemies can siege your city, or you can siege other people's cities through a download system. And the way that works is the first time after your own city gets attacked, you're given the option to upload your city to a server. And it's basically a save file. So what happens when you want to fight other people's cities is it'll pick one of those save files that's kind of corresponds to the progression you have in your own game. It'll place the same enemies in the spawn points that the player who built that city did. And after the battle, you can rate it thumbs up or thumbs down. And that goes into the backend engine. So it tries to give people maps that are thumbs up. And this kind of comes from what I was talking about earlier in the interview, where I wanted to build this kind of city building game where you're defending your city. That's kind of that idea that got into the final game.
Mm. And from what I understand here, this game is tied to another game called Just Ember. This takes place in the world of Ember, if you will. And how much of this Ember game do you need to know to play Empires of Ember?
You don't need to know any of it. I licensed Ember in order to get assets and music to kind of give myself a head start, because me being a programmer, I was hoping I could avoid the full cost of developing all these assets myself. So if you've played the original Ember, you'll recognize the monsters, the music, but the story and everything else is all new.
Okay. And is that like, what about like factions or kingdoms? Like, if you played the original Ember game, would you know the the people or the places in here?
No, there are hints to it here and there. We might say they're Easter eggs, but it's all new.
Fair enough. And I guess that this would probably answer the question about the music, or at least some of it. Like you mentioned, you licensed some of the music from this original Ember game. Is that like all of the tracks, or just some of them?
That's all of the tracks except for the main menu and the promo music. The main menu and the promo music was created new. I actually auditioned over 200 people to find the guy who did that music, and he did a really great job. We used Skyrim as an inspiration for the music, and I would say what he created is not that far beneath what Skyrim's music is. It's really great. I mean, everyone's gonna have a different opinion, but I really love the music.
Right. And digging deeper into the systems, you, I've seen that magic is a big part of the gameplay here. How does it work? You know, like, do you do you build to certain kinds of magic, or is it different kinds of spells?
It's different spells. So kind of like in Dark Messiah of Might and Magic, where you have your primary weapon, but then you also have your spells to kind of give you a boost. So it's like that. I think right now there's about 25 different spells, and they have synergies with each other. For example, if you use telekinesis to pick up dead bodies and you stack them all in a pile, and then you cast Raise Dead on the pile, then you'll get a whole bunch of zombies. Whereas if you had just cast it on one body, you just get one zombie. Um, but yeah, every time you level up, you get what is called an Ember Shard in the game, and then you spend those to get spells or level up spells along the tier tree.
Okay, and indeed, how elaborate is there a skill tree independent of magic in this game?
Not a skill tree. However, you do upgrade your army through the army tree.
Okay, and what kinds of things can you upgrade in regards to your army?
You can upgrade, well, you can either buy units directly that are higher level, or you can upgrade your units through that tree. So for example, you can upgrade a farmer to an archer, a mercenary, or a zombie. And if you go to an archer, you could upgrade them from a cloth archer to a leather archer. If you go zombie, I think after a zombie, a skeleton, and so on. So you just follow those trees. The design is such that it's much cheaper to upgrade your units than it is to just try to buy units. And one of the skills you have is leadership, which gives your units a chance to survive combat as long as they're not undead.
Hmm. And what about the siege and city building portions? Are there any kind of upgrade bits to those?
Well, with Siege, you would simply upgrade your units to be higher level units, although you can also build catapults. But with city building, there's actually over 2,500 different models. You can upgrade your primary production buildings, such as your wizard tower, can be upgraded directly and unlock more stuff and higher production. Um, all those models are for decoration for people who like that kind of thing, and everything's destructible. And what's fun about that, at least for me, is because you're sharing your city with other people. If you do take the time to upgrade your city, other people will get to appreciate that.
I see. And what kinds of buildings can you build, for lack of a better term? Like, is it all just castle stuff?
That's actually a really good question. It's not actually blocks like what you might get with Minecraft. Instead, they're all models. So you can place a house, and then you might have like the end section of a windmill, which if you wanted to, you could place it on a house. So you could put windows, you could put chairs, you could put a table with sausage on it, all destructible, and it all uses physics too.
Yeah. And can you customize these buildings?
You can scale, translate, and rotate them, including sinking them into the ground to a certain degree, besides decorating the buildings directly.
Hmm. And what about cosmetics?
Are you referring to cosmetics in terms of building or in terms of general players buying cosmetics?
In terms of building, like, can you say place curtains on the windows or something of that accord?
You can place tapestries on the walls, um, all kinds of different barrels and boxes and crates, all manner of different food. Um, there's a lot there. Uh, yeah.
Okay. And I suppose shifting things a bit back to, well, the early access. How long do you plan on having this game in early access? And what is the state of the game currently? Like, are you still building things? Are you still figuring out systems? Or is it all just polish at this point?
At this point, following up on user feedback, I also have three main missions yet to be released. Mainly, it's just a matter of polishing them. So the three main missions are going to be released every 2 weeks over the next month and a half. In terms of polishing, users indicated that they felt the melee combat wasn't very strong. And my analysis of that is a lot of it is due to weak animations, not enough feedback. It's a little bit disjointed between what you do and what enemies do. I've gotten very good feedback on the bow and the staff combat in comparison, because there is no joints between those animations because you're shooting stuff in the air. Besides that, I want to expand on the downloaded city combat a little bit. Players don't really seem to be picking up on that, even though it's a big feature. And I think that's because it's kind of tucked in there, where it's just like this portal that you explore and you go fight this city. It's just kind of this extra thing to do. So I'm going to make that a more prominent part of the game by having these downloaded cities be actual cities on the campaign map. And I haven't fully decided what to do with that. Possibly you can explore them, possibly you can trade with them, possibly you just fight them and maybe they send out armies to attack their own city.
Hmm. And how long do you estimate that the early access period will last?
I'm going to keep working on the game until people love the game, basically, because I'm self-funded. I don't have any particular timeline. I do know my goal. My goal is I want to get 100,000 wish lists. Um, that's pretty much what I need to make the game financially worthwhile for all the time I spent on it anyway. So yeah.
Right. And um, do you have any? Is this game currently available for Windows only, or are there also built for Mac and Linux?
Currently, I'm focusing on Windows. I might support more platforms in the future, but for every additional platform I support, it doubles or triples build times, perhaps 50% more testing time. It's not quite as easy as some people believe to do these kind of ports.
Right. Especially Linux. Like, I suppose my final question is about the price. So the game is currently $24.99. Is that a price that's going to stay, or is that going to change as this game goes through the early access process up to 1.0 release?
I was going to keep it at this price during early access, and most likely I would raise it to $29.99 for the full release. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I've looked at other games at different price points, and mine for the scope and the quality level that I'm targeting, it's closer to that than it is $24.99.
Okay. Right. So I think I've run through my set of questions. Let's see if my colleagues here have any further questions for you at this time.
I think I'm good.
I'm good.
Twilight.
I'm good.
All right then. So Kevin, I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule and joining us here tonight. Your game certainly looks interesting, and we'll see how it develops, and hopefully it gets to the level of polish that the audience wants it to be. In the meantime, the game is Empire of Ember. It's currently available on Steam Early Access for $24.99. Be sure to pick it up today. Petty, play us to the next segment. All right. So welcome to the topic of discussion for the week. This time around, we are talking about Portal 2. We are talking about Portal 2 because last Sunday, if I'm recalling correctly, the game hit its 10th anniversary. And if you are saying there's no way Portal 2 could be that old,
Welcome to the
direct you
club.
to the many memes of what X thing 20 years ago actually was what you think X thing 20 years ago was.
uh-huh. Yeah. So, yeah, Portal is an old game at this point. It's not old enough to be retro, like, but it's kind of scary that at least the beginning part of the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, they're approaching retro status. I think retro status is like 20 years or something like that. Like, I don't know how it officially works.
I'd probably be more comfortable numbering it in generations rather than years, but yeah.
I suppose that makes sense, especially since like the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3 just lasted for fucking ever.
Mm-hmm.
Chugging along there, even as recently as say 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago, something like that.
Yeah.
So, but Portal 2, yeah, it's not just an old game, but it was it was kind of the end of an era, because Portal 2, up until the release of Half-Life Alyx last year, was the last traditional kind of game that Valve put out. Contrary to what certain memes would have you believe, Valve hasn't just been developing nothing or hats. No, Valve got on the games as a service or live service or whatever term we're using for these things this week. They got on that train early. They were one of the earliest evangelicals for this particular monetization. And strangely enough, they don't get a lot of heat for it either. And I couldn't tell you why. Because Team Fortress 2, Dota 2, fucking gas trailblazers here. And, they made Valve so much money that they found it to be a better use of their resources, if you will, to focus on that stuff rather than making more Half-Lives, Left 4 Deads, and indeed Portals. That being said, even though Portal 2 is the last of the, let's say, original era of traditional Valve games, because even Half-Life Alyx is fulfilling a particular interest of Valve, and that is virtual reality. Even keeping that in mind, Portal 2 bears a lot of trends of the early 2010s. And that, nothing to me screams early 2010s or late 2000s more than co-op. And I'm not saying co-op is a bad thing or anything like that. And indeed, Portal 2 in particular has some masterful co-op. Make no mistake. In fact, Valve realized that just having the single player campaign with multiple people, not necessarily the best idea, because that just means you have a single player campaign with fucking multiple people in it, and that fucks the game up. There was a term for it around this, around like 2011, forced co-op. Now it's just co-op being thrust into every fucking game because the belief is, oh god, it's single player. It won't fucking sell unless at least 2 people can play it. And clearly that's not the case. But Valve, once again, like if you play Portal 2, you know what I'm talking about. But if you haven't, Portal 2 has a dedicated single player campaign, which continues the story from the original Portal. Portal 2's co-op, however, is its own independent thing. And that's kind of what separates Portal 2 from a lot of the other chaff. They actually built the fucking levels and the campaign around the idea that you have 2 people. And you can only play it with 2 people. But it also had a single-player campaign in case, you don't have access to a buddy at that particular moment in time. And by the way, this is shit that still goes on today. Just see Outriders, which just came out. It's a looter shooter that's built for multiple people. It's a games service title. But they still try to frame it as a single-player experience. Yeah, you can experience it in the same way you can experience a long, torturous slog. Because guess what? That's kind of how single-player in Gas goes. Because everything's made to be damaged by, like, 4 people.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of the thing that happened around the trend of co-op. Either you had a mismatched balance, or it was completely co-op, and you had to deal with a dumbass AI partner. The Resident Evil 5 effect.
Yep.
And I really do think it was Resident Evil 5 that kicked off this particular trend for a good long while. Because, believe it or not, Resident Evil 5 is the best-selling Resident Evil game of all time. In fact, it was Capcom's highest-selling game until Monster Hunter World.
Mm-hmm.
So, when you're posting numbers like that, yeah, you're going to influence a few things. That being said, like I said, Portal 2 had a great had a great co-op campaign. At least so I've heard. I've actually never played the game co-op. I'm not really a co-op guy, if you will. I'm very much, I like my single player. I don't know, maybe we'll do the co-op here at some point in the future. But as far as the single player goes, I've always in the camp of 0 punctuation on Portal 2 single player. I know it has its fans, and there are those who crown it like the best game ever or the best.
The story is good, the humor is good,
Mm-hmm.
but it lacks the. Portal 1 had a lot of simplicity of design and concept, and not a lot of extra stuff. And Portal 2 is the single player is simultaneously less open-ended, and there's generally less area where you can put portals on.
Yeah.
And like more of the puzzles have like one specific solution rather than a couple of possible ones. And also it's just a lot longer. And yeah, the new gimmicks aren't bad,
Mm-hmm.
but again, part of the reason the first one was so good was because it was very clear about what it was doing.
Yeah, and it's not like you couldn't do extra Portal content, because there was, like, for example, there was an entire Xbox Live Arcade game made out of test chambers. But that was kind of the thing. Like the extra portal stuff ended up being like test chamber stuff. Um, but it's honestly, I thought that was the best part of Portal 2. Once it started getting out of the test chamber area, yeah, it was a lot of less figuring out a puzzle and less figuring out that one fucking place to put a portal on. Which was a lot less interesting. Basically, I do agree with Yahtzee that I don't think Portal 2 was better than Portal 1, but I think it was a lot flabbier. Definitely a case of, sequel escalation. We are making, because Portal was this 3-hour basically side thing. It's one of the reasons why they came up with the orange box entirely, because remember, Portal was created in like 2006, 2000, and released in 2007. This is when digital distribution was in its infancy. The idea of selling a 3-hour game, anathema to business sense at that particular point. At least something of this scale. Like I said, you did have smaller games, but even they weren't clocking in at like 3 hours usually. Or if they were simple arcade stuff that was like from PopCap or Pom Pom Games or what have you. They weren't something that you released in a a physical release for $60.
Mhm.
So that's why they decided to bundle up all of the Half-Life content they had, stick it with Team Fortress 2, which once again, a multiplayer only thing. Selling that alone was an alien idea. Not so much these days, but even like even still releasing like multiplayer only will get some people chuffed. Like I say, it depends on the circumstances, but regardless, and also like free to play. What was free to play to the West? Like we talked to a Korean company at the start of the season about free to play, and free to play was a thing in East Asia about this time, but not over here. Like that took quite a while to take over. So Portal 2 gets released alongside the Orange Box and becomes a smash hit. So Valve decides that if they're going to do more Portal, they're going to pump it on steroids, more or less. And that's what they did. Like, I'll be. That's another thing. I never finished Portal 2 because I was just getting tired of it. I thought the pacing wasn't as good as Portal 1 either. Now, make no mistake, still a good game, but I don't think it's better than Portal 1. I do think Portal was the proper length for its particular gimmick subset, at least as far as single player goes. As I understand it, the best ideas, the best design ended up in the co-op campaign. And I guess I should play that at some point, but until then, as far as the single player goes, it's like it's solid. I don't think it's bad like certain people do, but I do think it is less than by being more. Um, any other thoughts, opinions, or what have you on Portal 2?
Not really. I believe I beat it like a couple years ago, the main story, and enjoyed it, but that was also a while back.
Yeah. I mean, I guess another thing to mention is the elaborate ARG around the game.
Oh yeah, that was a thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, like it was this whole potato thing that was running through a whole bunch of indie games, like The Ball. Like I forget a lot of what they were because we were talking about 10 years ago.
I'm sure there's a YouTube video somewhere that goes over all of it.
Yeah, and it was all towards this thing that if you like, I think it was like a point score, or like if you got a certain number of achievement points or something, like um, Portal 2 would release early until the publisher of the game, EA, stepped in and said, no, you can't do that. Because that's another thing. Portal 2 was the last game that was published by an external publisher. Yeah, that's another thing that's kind of forgotten. But EA was handling the physical releases of Valve games at this particular moment in time through their partners program. And yeah, EA wasn't really happy with the idea that Valve was basically going to undercut the console versions, which they were handling. So that all got kiboshed. And I'm probably maybe not the most popular opinion, and it's weird for me to say because I hate EA as much as the next person, but I think they were right here. In all estimation, this is a dickish move to do to your publishing partner. Especially since these things are based off of contracts. Like, this could have gotten Valve sued. I'm willing to bet because it would have constituted a breach of contract. I, can't speak on the specifics, but I'm going to bet diamonds to donuts that that's the reason why Portal 2 didn't end up coming out early. Like, and if you want to know a lot more about the particulars of the development of Portal 2, the final hours of Portal 2, I think, is still on Steam. Like, it's $2, but it was like the first of those final hour things, and goes into a lot of detail of how the game was created and all that.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't personally watched it, but this isn't really a recollection of how Portal 2 was created. It's more, our connection to Portal 2, since it is 10 years old now. And as far as a Portal 3, I'm like,
I mean, Valve can't count to 3, so
yeah, I was about to say they can.
Valve can count a spin-off though, and
right. So it wouldn't be Portal 3; it would be like Portals or
Portal, Portal Watley, let's say, or what, Portal GLaDOS, or whatever idea that they would come up with, because like I think there is potential in virtual reality for the Portal gimmick. Like, I think the new frontier of that might give the Portal ideas some new life. I mean, it would also probably get people to throw up as well. But that didn't stop them from making Half-Life Alyx. But, we'll have to see what they do. Because it is known that Valve has, like, at least 2, maybe 3 other VR projects. Because, like I said, Valve is in a position where they don't have to indulge in market trends. They don't have to release Half-Life 3 ever. If they were a public company, if they had to answer to investors, we would have gotten Half-Life's fucking 6. Among other things, until the franchise had just burned itself out. It's more Valve lost interest in making Half-Life games for a long time.
Valve basically lost interest in making games for a long time.
Once again, Valve lost interest in making traditional quote-unquote games. Valve had a lot of interest in making games as service stuff. Once again, CSGO, they've actually been doing a lot of work with that. Not just like, I know it was initially put out in like 2013, 2014, but games as service games don't stay static. They're always fucking updating, and there's always fucking changing until, well, they end up like Team Fortress 2, which is kind of stale and dead. But point of order is they've been working on these kind of games. They released Artifact. And I'm sure they regret that. Like, much more successfully has been their auto chess clone, Dota Underlords. Like, so, they've been doing these kind of games rather than narrative heavy first person shooters or co-op focused things like Left 4 Dead and Portal 2. And now what's interesting them in terms of single player experiences is VR. And yeah, like VR, especially the scale of VR Valve is doing right now, is incredibly niche. Because keep in mind, Valve isn't building for like the PlayStation VR set or anything of moderate power. No, no, no. Like they're the high end VR experience. Like you will need the full room VR to do Half-Life Alyx, and you will need a PC powerful enough to run that. We're talking like a couple thousand, at the very least.
Yep.
That's not including scalper prices now, but yes.
I mean, like, there's a reason why the Valve VR Index is in their fucking top 10 because that shit is ranked by revenue because that shit costs $1,500.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said, we might see a Portal something, but I think it will be a VR game and not just a VR experience either. Or if they have it as a VR experience, it's going to be a fucking test for a full-on Portal game in VR.
I think that made me sick.
Right. Understandable. Anyway, so that'll about do it for Portal 2, and that'll about do it for this installment of Fragments of Silicon. The week ahead. Well, no episode of Last News Desk on the Left this week or next week. No Friday show this week. So, bit of a light one this week. So, coming up on the Sunday reviews, we'll be having reviews of Shadow Man Remastered. As the name may entail, it's a remastering, a proper remastering, by the way. Once again, the whole thing is blurry, but this is original assets that have been upscaled and retextured. So they look nicer, but you still got the fucking shovel hands of 1999. And yeah, Shadow Man was a fairly pushed game in the year of 1999. It was a mature third-person action platformer. Think of it; it's kind of in the vein of, say, Tomb Raider or Legacy of Kain.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that. Only with an M rating. And our friends at Night Dive have recently put out the remaster. And thank God for that. It's like I can say this game has never controlled better, but they didn't manage to flush all of the 1999 out of it. Like, more on that on Sunday. For the PlayStation 4, Petty will be covering The Language of Love, another visual novel ported to the system by Radalaikia. It's it's a romance visual novel, though an all ages one. Got Jet Set Knights for the Nintendo Switch, so this is Galaxy's game, which is a old school arcade action game, or at least a faux old school action arcade game, because this is not an actual old game. It's just in the style of that. And it's also got tower defense and RPG elements.
Oh boy.
And we got Rodent War, or rather, Twilight Winter has Rodent Warriors.
Mhm.
Which is a retro-styled 2D RPG action game. So a lot of retro. Oh, I guess faux retro going on this week. Though Shadow Man is actually a retro title at this point. But all of that is on Sunday. So until then, I shall wish you good gaming.